All right, good morning, everyone. I would like to call the meeting of the CMAQ, CRP, and TAP Project Selection Committee to order. My name is Doug Ferguson, representing CMAP. Let's go around the table and introduce ourselves. Curie, would you like to start? You're going to need to press the button. Yep.
Hi, I'm Kerry Fujisawa. I'm from CDOT for Grant. He has a conflict today. So.
And Mark RTA representing transit agencies.
Mark Pitstick, RTA representing transit agencies.
John Paul Deepla, FHWA.
Tom Rickard from Kane County, representing the counties.
Christopher Schmidt from the Illinois Department of Transportation, representing the Illinois Department of Transportation.
Great. So just as a reminder, make sure to turn your mics off or on, sorry, when you speak, just so that the folks online can hear, and it helps with the audience as well. Item 2.0, agenda changes and announcements. We don't have any agenda changes. Are there any announcements that committee members would like to make? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the minutes. Included in your materials were the draft minutes from August 28th meeting. There was one change that we needed to make that was not represented what was sent out. John Paul was left off the attendance list. He has been added in. So do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you, Chris. Do I have a second?
Seconded by RTA.
Thank you. So with that change, are there any other changes or discussion on the minutes as proposed? All right, seeing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the minutes pass. Moving on to the program monitoring section. So included in your materials were the programming status sheets for the 3 programs. Nothing to add here at this moment. Are there any questions on those right now? All right. Also included in there was the CMAQ programming and summary obligation goal sheet. I would note that so far to date, there's been a little over 8 million obligated in CMAQ funding. And just today, there was a transfer for Metro's locomotive project of 29 million from FHWA to FTA, which is not reflected on this sheet as it was prepared last week. I bring up that transfer because there were a couple of issues related to obligation limitation that occurs on the federal side. Because we're in a continuing resolution for the budget and DC, they limit the amount that can be obligated at the state side. And we kind of hit that wall. IDOT did some maneuvering when Metro put in the request, and they were eventually able to make it work. But this could be a problem if we keep having continuing resolutions and the obligation limitation. Because we have several large potential transfers from FHW to FTA for other projects, the transit projects, our estimates show about 80 million in CMAQ and another 30 million in CRP. So it could delay some of those transfers occurring. I don't think it'll affect much on the road side of things, only because typically when projects are authorized, they go into advanced construction status first. And so that's not held up by the limitation. Any questions on the obligation goal or the obligation limitation? Did you have anything you wanted to add on that, Chris?
I just wanted to say briefly that one of the questions that came out is if we had an idea of which FTA transfers were coming next or anytime soon, which of course we have that ability with the TIP, and Doug and Ken were able to provide that information. So we moved that on to the folks that kind of move those monies around, and they're quite aware now of what's coming down the pike. So this should be something they could plan for I think in the past, for whatever reason, it wasn't as well known what was going to be coming, and they felt at least a bit blindsided by some FTA transfers that were in the tens of millions of dollars, but should be quite present of what's happening in the near future. I think the one you provided goes out to maybe like 2028. So, I mean, obviously there's the ability for you guys to move some of those up, and that may happen, but open dialogue with you folks, if that were to happen, would be, of course, welcomed. And
And if we moved up funding, that would come to this committee, it wouldn't just be
Yeah, it wouldn't
like
be.
a staff level decision. But yeah. Mark?
Yeah, thanks for doing that, Chris, working on that. I mean, the ones I'm thinking of are like, some may have already happened. What, the State Lake, did that already happen, or is that in that?
There is another large state
Lake.
lake, 48 million is part of that 80 million that I
Yeah,
mentioned.
okay.
Yeah,
And then there's probably some red line stuff coming up, and
that's the CRP funds, the
and
30
s-
million.
CTA electric buses too, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so several big ones.
Yes.
On the list.
And we like typically share a year in advance what we think is going to happen. Now, sometimes things get delayed and projects don't go to requesting, but typically with the FTA transfer requests, those tend to be when we have them programmed. We try to keep them in where we think they're going to go. Yep. All right, moving on to item 5.0, project change requests. I'd like to call John Hasma up. He's going to lead us through the three change requests that we received since our last meeting.
Morning, committee members. Staff received 3 project change requests, 2 being for CMAQ funded projects and 1 being for a TAP-L funded project. So the first request is for, and if we move along to the next slide, we'll see that it's for the Waukegan and East Lake Avenue intersection improvement project in Glenview. It's currently programmed for $168,000 CMAQ for right-of-way in 2025 and $4,405,000 CMAQ for construction and construction engineering that's in deferment. So with that, the sponsors are requesting a reinstatement of its construction engineering funding in 25 and a cost increase of $717,000 CMAQ in 25. And the increase is being requested to cover higher unit prices and additional work to meet ADA requirements. The project did have pre-final plan submitted to IDOT in May 2024, and it's set to be on the March 25 state letting. Staff did re-rank the project among intersection improvement projects in the 2020 to 2024 program, and it remained the 6th ranked project, and that remains above 2 other selected projects in its category. Staff's recommending approval of the requested reinstatement and cost increase for a total of $5,122,000 CMAQ for construction and construction engineering in 25. So we move along to the next slide. We'll see that it's segment 4 of the Des Plaines River Trail, and this is sponsored by the Forest Preserve District of Cook County. This segment of the project has $2,782,000 TAP-L for construction and construction engineering that's currently in advanced construction. And the sponsors requesting a cost increase of $233,000 TAP-L for construction in 25. This project was on the September 24 letting, and additional funds are being requested due to higher than anticipated bid prices. Staff's recommending approval of the requested cost increase for construction in 25. And then the last request we have, if we move on to the next slide, we'll see that it's for it's a transfer for the bus slow zone elimination project sponsored by the CTA. The project is programmed for $2 million CMAQ for engineering in 2025 and $13.2 million CMAQ for construction in 25. The sponsors requesting a transfer of $2,640,000 CMAQ from construction to engineering, since there's additional engineering work for final design that's needed and funding for construction's enough to cover the current scope of work. Staff's recommending approval of the requested transfer from construction to engineering. That's would happen in 2025. So those two would cancel each other out, just a switch between phases. With that, that concludes the 3 project change requests we received. Happy to answer questions if there are any.
Thanks, John. Do we have a motion on the table to approve the three changes as recommended?
Rickert will make a motion to approve.
Thanks. Second?
I'll second, but want some discussion.
Yep.
Second, Pit Stick.
Thank you, Mark. All right, discussion, questions, yes.
Yeah, on the CTA project, a couple questions. I mean, that's a fairly large change for engineering. First of all, we don't typically fund engineering unless this is final engineering, I guess. So
Yeah.
was there preliminary engineering already?
There had been, yes, preliminary engineering done.
And do we know any more about why the engineering costs have doubled or almost more than doubled? Is that final engineering?
I believe it just came down to they had to do additional work for some of the design elements. Like, I mean, you're engineering on a roadway for a transit agency, and then like realize that like when you start having discussions with CDOT and IDOT for some of the roads, that additional work had to be done. That's to the best of my understanding. I do believe we have someone from CTA on the line. If you, I mean,
Yeah, who's on there? Who?
Yeah, this is Jason Meter from CTA. That's a correct assessment. We've been in close coordination with CDOT on this one, and they'll actually be managing the phase 2 final design and construction of this. Just with changing traffic patterns and ridership since the inception of the project, resulted in changes to the concept design. So there's more upfront cost into the final design before we move to construction. We just want to make sure that we have enough. This is a project with multiple locations scattered around corridors, so want to have everything in good shape with enough locations in the pipeline to satisfy the total construction cost and use it as efficiently as possible.
All right. Thanks, Jason. I was hoping you were on the call. I was looking for giving you an opportunity to talk.
Yep. Yeah.
Can I ask another question in that regard?
yeah, sure.
Typically with engineering cost increase of that amount, that correlates to the construction costs increasing too. Do you have an estimate on what the construction costs increases might be? And are you looking at coming back for CMAQ? Or
At this time, we're not looking at coming back for more with the currently projected costs still to be refined, but the construction costs is estimated now. We should be able to cover it with CMAQ. In the event that there is not, we could potentially work with CDOT to see if there's efficiencies, with some of their overlapping projects, that are going to be touching these roadways anyway, in which case, some of the construction costs could be, kind of split between that if needed. For instance, if there's a arterial resurfacing overlap, then the resurfacing part of the project, would potentially not hit the budget of this one, whereas, the specifically bus priority infrastructure in that area that could be here. So, kind of looking at ways to optimize efficiency where there's potential for overlapping projects that CDOT's doing anyway. But the short answer to the question is we don't anticipate to have to come back for additional construction funding.
thank you.
All right. Any other questions on either this project or the other two, the Glenview and the display Forest Preserve District's Display River Trail project? All right, hearing none, we have a motion on the table. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the project changes pass. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, the 2026 to 2030 call for projects. Call for projects is currently open, and we've got 36 applications currently that are in the ETIP system in the process. We do anticipate that there'll be several more. It's just within the next like 15 days. CDOT hasn't put any of their projects in quite yet. None of the three service boards have put theirs in, and so we probably will double by the time that those are all in. but everything seems to be going along fine. We hope to, once we have all the projects submitted by December 20th deadline, we'll put together a summary, get that out to you as committee members in advance of your February meeting. But then we'll have a lot more details on what applications are submitted at the February meeting. So with that, there's nothing else unless there's any questions on the call for projects.
There wasn't any like one-off locomotive diesel retrofits or anything like that, was there, in the 30 you've gotten thus far?
There have been no diesel retrofit like locomotive projects that have entered. I do believe Metro might be asking for a little bit more, but nothing on the private side that I'm aware of. But if there is, I will reach out to you, Chris.
Sure. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I have been noticing a lot more EV and EV infrastructure related projects being submitted this year. But everything else seems to be kind of standard.
The only thing I would say is how aware those sponsors are of the kind of the phase out of the Buy America waiver process. I couldn't give it to you right now in long form as to exactly how it goes, but there's sort of milestones with that. And
Yeah, we're hoping that at least with the EV infrastructure, that the Buy America waiver stays in place for like that was created specifically for EV infrastructure. Anytime any sponsor has contacted us, I do bring that up when it comes to vehicles outside of the transit agencies, which have their own process through FTA, and yeah,
very good. Thank you.
not a problem. All right, moving on to 7.0, other business. Is there any other business that members would like to bring before the committee today? Yes, John Paul.
John Paul Dipla, FHWA. I just wanted to make note that the 2024 CMAQ program interim guidance was published in the Federal Register on November 6th, 2024. And there's a 60-day public comment period that ends on January 6th, 2025. Comments can be submitted to the docket.
All right, thanks, John Paul. Yeah, staff was aware of that. We've attended a couple of webinars on that. There's nothing that we feel at this point in time is like a change from what like the guidance changes what we do. A lot of it was reiterating some of the eligibility clarifications, I would say. Like it wasn't like there was a major change in eligibility. It was more clarification type information. And then taking the guidance and trying to put it in a more user-friendly format than it was previously. Because the last time it was done was 2013. There's been a few acts passed since that time, so there was a little bit of catch-up that needed to be done on the federal side. All right. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just sort of not doing a healthy job of reporting out about the tier 2 consultation, but something that came up in that may be important to this group. So there was a Federal Register change in guidance for PM 2.5, making it a more stringent requirement to be considered in attainment. Initial reports when that first came out was that maybe Illinois was going to have more non-attainment areas because at the time there were monitors that weren't that were in exceedance of those new standards or would be potentially in exceedance of the new standards if that got passed. We were told in the tier 2 consultation that the data that they will be submitting to US EPA shows that that is not the case, that multiple MPOs in Illinois will be added to the roster. And I guess I bring that up to this group because that would of course change the amount of funding that the Chicagoland region gets if we were to have multiple now non-attainment areas. Again, Doug's looking off into the space. So
Well, no, I'm just, it is for PM, correct?
Yeah.
Would that actually change the CMAQ distribution? Because I thought that was based upon, ozone.
right. Well, there's that percentage that has to be spent for PM 2.5 mitigation, and maybe that's changed.
No, so there's still a requirement of the PM requirement, which when we were moved into attainment, that requirement dropped for us, but East St. Louis, I still believe falls in the PM 2.5 requirement. But I didn't know if like adding PM 2.5 non-attainment areas throughout the state would then open up the CMAQ redistribution.
I'm getting told no from the dugout on this one.
Okay,
I was under the impression that potentially it would have, but it's not the case anyway. So either way, it's not gonna be a concern.
okay.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously like we want to be prepared for these things, but nothing has been done
Right,
to this
right.
point in time.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
And,
all.
and it could also change in like 2 months.
Yeah, well, I would speculate to say more rigorous air quality standards might not be
Yep.
first on the agenda.
All right, anything else under other business? All right, public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that wishes to address the committee today?
Yes, good morning. This is John Paul Jones with Grover Englewood, and also I work with the Red Line Extension TIP Coalition and Sustainable Englewood Initiatives. And I'm just happy to hear the report today from the call for action. There's conversation on the south side about ways in which we can better direct either CDOT or CTA or some projects that we hope to see accomplished under the next federal call. We do know that we know not the future as we move into a new phase of federal administration and what they would do to our capital spending priorities for the region. And so we wanted to, as much as possible, take advantage of this season, and to get good applications into through these agencies. And so we're still working out some things, and so I'm happy to hear that they're still thinking through their application submittals. Also happy to see that the red line should be moving forward. We hope to see some good progress before the end of the year with the president signing some kind of full funding agreement. We did, and we'll continue to look at ways in which we can add more capital towards the Englewood Nature Trail as well. We're starting to see a lot of options that we have related to alternative transportation. We're still trying to get ideas about how those could be orchestrated. And so this is a critical time for us, and we appreciate the informational exchange that you had displayed today. Thank you for all your work. Bless you.
Thank you, John Paul. Are there any other comments online?
This is just Adriana with the Village of Glenview. Thanks for approval.
I'm sorry, Adriana, did you wanted to say something?
Oh, I just want to say thank you for the approval
Oh.
of the funding. That's it. And
All right.
happy,
Great,
and
thank
happy
you.
holidays.
Happy holidays. All right, if there are no more comments, next meeting. So included in your materials were the 2025 committee meeting dates. These are obviously subject to change if we don't get project changes or don't have any other thing, we've canceled them. Obviously, we've done that twice already this year. But I just wanted to make you guys all aware of these dates. If there are any like conflicts that you notice, like thing, let us know and we'll see what we can do about changing it. But yeah. And with that, I don't have any other business. Do I have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Thank you, Tom. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, thanks, Mark. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, meeting's adjourned. Thank you.